Welcome, folks, to the 1st of January 2024 Aries Working Group Call. Very glad you're here. This is a Hyperledger call, so the antitrust policy and the code of conduct are in effect. Links in the agenda. Agenda link can be found in the chat. You're welcome to add yourself to the attendees list or make any other adjustments useful to the community. I know all of you, so I don't see anyone new today, but I'm grateful that you're here. I don't have any announcements on the list. Is there an announcement that should be? Besides Happy New Year 2024. All right. Was anyone particularly industrious over the holiday and has some project or work updates to share? All right. I did not anticipate any, given the time off that we all took, which I hope was enjoyed. On the agenda today, I have the main topic is a 2024 roadmap. I'd also think this is a decent time to sort of revisit the working group regular activities and see if there's any adjustments that we want to make. I don't have any glaring ones, but I think it's worth revisiting this periodically to see if there's stuff that we want to adjust about the way that we do things. And so I've got that on the list as well. Anything on the we want on the agenda or any changes we want to make? All right. Roadmap. This is a good thing to do anyway, but Stephen brought up the point that Hyperledger has requested the projects in their first report of the year, not just do a quarterly report, but actually lay out their plans for the year. And this is, brings some awareness to Hyperledger as an organization about what's going on and where things are going. And so this will serve that purpose as well, to kind of highlight what's really going on and reach out a little further than we normally do to accomplish what we need or to plan what we hope to accomplish this year. So that's the discussion today. Stephen, did I miss any details there?
No, you got it pretty much right. That's what we need to do. We need to do that for all projects at Hyperledger need to do that. And so, as you've got it, taking a look back at what happened in Aries last year, what's we want to see happen this year is the right topic to go through.
Also, if I recall, they're encouraging more than the usual number of attendees during presenting the report. Is that correct? So normally, it's just a few members, and that's something that you've done for us for the last while. But they're looking for more than the usual number to attend. Is that also true, or did I make that up?
That is welcome. The more interesting thing is that the TOC members will be assigned to each project and will sort of raise questions about it, and it can't be a TOC member related to the project.
Okay. So I'm going to write that down so that I remember, and we can announce that when we get to the date set, and the date might already be set, but when it gets closer, and encouraging more folks to attend.
Yeah,
Excellent.
It'll be, I think, the second meeting, the first or second week in February. I'm going to add to this link a post from the TOC website that has a annual report requirements.
Ooh, fantastic.
A link, so it'll describe what's needed.
Awesome. Okay, so very much looking for discussion and suggestions and everything here. I'm going to take the really easy one and add completing the unqualified DIDs update, community coordinated update that we have already begun. So that's the really low-hanging fruit. What other things do folks want to suggest for inclusion in an Aries roadmap for 2024? Even if there's things that are common that we've discussed, getting it on the roadmap will be helpful for those that are less familiar with our common conversations.
I think publishing a scaling report, scalability report. And then the second is transition or beginning of transition, whatever we want to put it, to DCOMP2. And or to the trust spanning layer, if that is the right way to go. I don't know. I heard rumors that there is actually a trust spanning document, which might be described as DIDCOM. But we need to be looking at it, I think, and have a position on it, if you will.
Yeah.
I think there's probably need to finish off the work in the various projects around AIP too. And then I guess starting to figure out what AIP 3 is going to look like, if there's going to be one.
Yeah, and the DIDCOMP2 could go under that. I think, yeah, agreed. I think the unqualified DIDs gets us a long way to finishing AIP2, whatever was, whatever else fits there, I think is related to unqualified DID support. Another would be continuing the transition or the work on ledger agnostic and on creds in Aries.
I have I guess a question to pose, which is kind of looking back at the 2023 and then coming back to looking ahead in 2024, which is how are people feeling about the progress made in 2023? Were there like unexpected potholes, and are there things that we could do about them? Those could be technical, they could be process, they could be shifts in the industry.
If only we'd done an annual report in 2023 that we could look back at and say, here's where we are.
I was just thinking the same thing. What happened that was not on the roadmap, right? There may be some wisdom in this annual report thing that the Hyperledger is pushing for, so I appreciate that.
So I don't have a good memory about this, but my vague impression was that I think we were hoping to have had, AIP2 in the can and things deployed with it by this time. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I think that's my impression. I think that, again, my impression is that we spent a lot of time in the various projects on a lot of rework this year in 2023. changing the underlying libraries and getting rid of some of the dependencies and whatever that. And I think those things were more involved than perhaps was initially thought they might be.
That lines up, Warren. I'm taking notes here, but I think that lines up with sort of what I remember. With what I was remember was happening. Also, OpenID made faster progress than we had anticipated at the beginning of 2023, and so that that kind of evolved over the year. I do anticipate. That OID for VC protocol support will continue to be in demand. The rework within projects, I think, is true. The other thing that I think has happened during 2023 is a lot of like actual real work done with real stuff. And as a result of that, when I'm looking at Akapai, there was lots of tuning made, not necessarily new massive blocks of features, but a lot of cleanup and tuning as we discovered corners of things that hadn't been tuned, and so I think a lot of that happened during 2023.
I don't know if this would be appropriate for this type of report, but one of the things that we spoke about in one of our last Aries marketing meeting calls is just providing an opportunity for more visibility on what people are building and doing with Aries. So, having more examples of implementation, more examples of deployments, kind of more feedback from the community in a public way of why they're choosing Aries, et cetera. This could be, stuff listed on, the wiki or a web page somewhere, or also the event that we've been talking about, trying to do another interopathon type event. So I don't know if it would be worth putting in some kind of, PR type bullet points in this report, but those are some things that we talked about in that working group call.
I think I think 2023 was the year we became aware, this wasn't the plan at the beginning, but we became aware that we needed to market much better than we had been previously. We've been just really busy doing and have done some amazing stuff, but not particularly marketing that particularly well or raising awareness of what we have and what it does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that contributes to that, besides the mentioned OIDC for VC protocol emergence, is the emergence of the Open Wallet Foundation as well. So there were other industry things happening that caused more introspection.
Yes. Yep. It's a little rude to put the Open Wallet Foundation as a pothole exactly, but I think that's part of what happened. Let me put discovery there. I don't know how to better to say that, but yeah.
And Sam, you might have said this at the top, but when is this meeting or this presentation of these items?
Stephen, you have the date? I think we're already in the calendar for that.
The report is due end of January, 1st of February, I think, and then it would be at a follow-up TOC meeting. So sometime in the first week or second week of February, I would expect.
Oh, cool. Right on.
And that is for all three projects of interest to this group, probably Aries and OnCreds and Indy. They probably will not all occur at the same week. We'll have to see how the TOC handles it. The TOC has not met for 2024 yet. That'll happen next week for the first time. So we'll go from there.
I put under interop events. Obviously, an interopathon and timing this with some efforts that we have is good. Another thing that I would love to do is stuck in my head was I'd like to add LTS efforts as a thing we focus on in 2024 as well.
Yeah,
we've already talked about that, but I think actually affecting that within projects would be good. But the JFF Plug Fest has been a thing that's happened, and we haven't, as an Aries community, really focused on that. There have been Aries code bases involved in the Plug Fest, but it's not something we've really coordinated as an Aries community. And that is something that I think we could pay a little more attention to. One of the reasons we haven't, I believe in the past, was that many of the parties involved in the Plug Fest don't have another interop effort that they've been involved in. And we've done a pretty good job historically with interopathons and events to actually promote and test and demonstrate interoperability. And so the Plug Fest has not been as urgent for our community as it has been for some of the others. But because it has evolved into a relatively large thing, there's lots of eyes on it. And so I think that part of our marketing and awareness efforts can be presence at the JFF Plug Fest to help people understand what we have and what we do with the various protocols and things that are there. And so that's why I think that the JFF Plug Fest deserves some attention here, alongside our own efforts to align around Aries interop profiles, etc. One of the things that
I have one other thing to kind of toss in there, and it's kind of related to the marketing awareness of projects and the like. And I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants here, but I think that I've heard a few different things about a large scale countrywide SSI deployment in the country of Bhutan. And I've heard vague things that was based on Aries technology, but I don't know that for sure, and that they're going through kind of a re-examination of where they're going next. There's been a couple of really good podcasts about it, but they didn't, understandably didn't talk about the technology very much.
Yeah, so that is definitely happening, and to the best of my knowledge, they are using the open source Verity platform that was open sourced by Evernym as part of those efforts. So that is definitely happening, and yes, but I think that is such a large thing that efforts as a community to both support them and to celebrate and promote their work there, I think would be useful as part of a marketing effort. I added this for discussion in a minute. How the working group, which is working group change for 2024, how the working group, our efforts here relate to DIDCOM related work and the existence of the DIDCOM user group over in the diff. It relates a little. That alignment.
Yeah, one thing I'd love to see. One thing I'd love to see is Sam. We've talked a little bit about this, and I'm planning on coming up with a proposal, but to rework or combine the protocol RFPs into a human-friendly published website that would be far more accessible to developers, and combine both the Aries RFC repository of protocols alongside the DIDCOM protocol, so that they're all accessible in the same place, and anyone else that publishes other ones that want published there can do so in an orderly fashion. I think that would be super helpful.
I think so. The Aries RFC work has changed natures over the past couple of years. There was a lot of conceptual stuff early on, and then there was more of an emphasis on the features with protocol definitions and such. And there's been less recently, and I don't think that that's a lack of interest, but so much as a focus on the implementation of the stuff that we had designed previously. One of the things that I think we could do is I think we need a status review as a parallel effort to the publishing that helps us to go through and identify what is current, what is historical, and everything else during the publishing, so that when people arrive there and see the massive RFCs that exist, that they don't necessarily
exactly
end up wading into stuff that used to be the current and isn't anymore. And so I think that having a darn good review, and there's a lot of stuff that ought to be like in the accepted status, like a long time ago, that just hasn't been. And so I think that like a status review of Aries RFCs is kind of due as part of that process, and to just kind of clean that up and make it more regular.
Well, just that whole GitHub repo is so inaccessible. I mean, it's just overwhelming to go to it. And it shouldn't be. It should be. That's bad marketing on our part. That a developer can't go there and know what to look at.
Yes. We can do better, and I think this is a good time.
Yeah. Yep.
So is that related to kind of a start here, or like usability or documentation, like better documentation for newcomers? Okay, cool. That's
absolutely. Yeah, it's just a GitHub repository with 1,000 protocols, and there should be here's where you get started, here's where AIP 1 is, here's where 2 is, well, not even AIP 1, just here's where AIP 2 is, here are the important ones, and drastically de-emphasize the ones that are just not relevant.
Yeah, or even like definitions of what all of those things are, so if somebody comes, they can get a sense of what they do.
And also with the DIDCOM users group and whatnot, with their specifications, it would be a good idea to refer over there for any sort of the protocols that we all share in common, and then create that sort of separation, which would drastically shrink down, I think, some of the RFCs that we have.
Yeah, what I'm thinking of is a combined site that combines the relevant RFCs from both repositories, the DIDCOM and the Aries RFCs, because really they're complementary and they shouldn't be separated. I look at what's on the didcom.org site, and it's, this RFC points to there and then just has a link over. Well, it shouldn't do that. It should have the actual relevant RFC there, or protocol, not RFC, the relevant protocol there. And so what I'd like to see is a combining of all of that into a published human first website. But absolutely still accessible as didcom.org. Machine as well if necessary, as appropriate. We really don't have a machine usable way to use it, but
we don't have a machine readable protocol def. And we discussed that long ago and then punted, and I don't think our decision then was a bad one. Then we need to decide if now is the time or if it's worth punting on it further.
But even what that would mean, but at minimum, didcom.org / protocol or /
protocol name, right?
Yep. issue credential /2.0 should point to the Aries RFC text.
Well, yeah, and especially with the fact that all of the protocol IDs or within the messages, they're no longer using didsoft. They're all pointing to didcom.org, whether or not there's documentation over there.
Exactly.
We need to make sure that everything is there. We had discussed previously the sucking in and including versus linking to, and at the time it was just a code issue. The other interesting bit is that right now the didcom.org, we're totally straying into the didcom related work, but I think this is worthy. We should probably divert here and then circle back. The didcom.org was contributed as a code effort by developers no longer involved, and so one of the challenges there is that if we want to make improvements that will require a code effort in order to change the code base behind, either improve the existing one or replace the code base behind the generation of didcom.org. One of the things that is not present in didcom.org but might need to be is actually something besides protocol definitions or in documentation in other ways. This would align with the features or the sort of the concepts, if you will, instead of the features that we've had historically in the Aries RFCs. And so I think that's one of the things to figure out there is what we can do, and then organizing the work to make that happen.
Yeah. I've done a couple of bash scripts, quite frankly, that take content and turn it into a website, and it's very simple these days to do it. It's more just thinking up what are the structure we want, and then it's a little bit of bash coding to suck in a repo and then grab what you want out of it and publish it. So
there's existing simpler frameworks than the one that was chosen for didcom.org.
Yes, much easier.
And
so MakeDocs
is one that you can expand in order to do more translation than is typically done. And so that's one of those things, for example, that we could do. Is figure out how to leverage that from existing stuff, and then make it auto-generated by GitHub Actions as part of the same.
Exactly.
Well, and there's all these sorts of different frameworks like Jekyll, Hugo, etc. All these static site generators that GitHub even supports, and then they just have a plethora of themes behind them for the markdown conversion.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about using. Yeah, exactly. Or at least I'm talking about that.
So as long as we're talking about DIDCOM related stuff, there is a DIDCOM working user group at the diff that is focused entirely just on DIDCOM itself and not implementations necessarily. So not really Aries project stuff, but just focused solely on DIDCOM in sort of an implementing project agnostic kind of a way. And Colton, who's here, is one of the co-chairs there of that particular group, and one of the things that's been open for a long time is where things ought to be discussed. So technically speaking, there's nothing wrong with any group defining a protocol within their community or vertical or coalition or whatever that is a DIDCOM protocol, and it can be hosted on didcom.org, doesn't have to be. that the question is that for the, historically DIDCOM was something that originated from within Aries, and so there wasn't really a separate place to talk about those things. We just talked about them here. And so one of the questions, we have some upcoming work needed to do to for example, as we move to DIDCOM v2 to sort of clean up and clarify things as related to issue, credential, and present proof, for example, but also other protocols. And should those be discussed here in the Aries working group, or should they be discussed over in the DIDCOM working group itself? And that's one of the things that has not really been actively talked about, is how these two groups work together and collaborate, and what that actually looks like. And so one of the things that I think would be helpful is to have maybe a better plan there, so that the groups understand how they work together, and who works on what, and sort of what the right home for things is. Any thoughts there? I am without clear solution on exactly how this ought to happen, and so very much appreciate thoughts that folks have on how to do that.
And I do want to go ahead and add to what you said real quick, that typically the user group has been a meeting of few individuals, especially compared to the Aries meetings. And because of that, we have discussed potentially changing the time frame if the current time frame just doesn't make sense for a lot of people who would like to attend. But because we don't have everyone who would like to attend going to these meetings, we also don't have feedback there on whether the current time works well, or if a better time would be more suited, and if how many people want to attend,
Thoughts are appreciated, even if it's one that is
Yeah,
not in alignment with what you've heard. That's especially important.
I do think that DIDCOM needs to, like, it is the same thing. It's the same effort. And so I do think it needs to be combined. And I think I just don't know what's the best way to do that. It certainly is complicated by the fact that we're across two different organizations. Whether that matters or not is different. It's just a reality that it is two different organizations. So you've got two different sets of infrastructure you're using, difference in different, meeting meeting notifications and where they come from and so on. But I definitely think they're, absolutely tied together. So love to see them combine efforts, if you will.
Well, they're more so tied together in the sense that Aries uses DIDCOM, and not necessarily the other way around, because there are some things going on in the DIDCOM users group that don't involve Aries whatsoever, just basic messages, or like a chat app that is not even using Akapai.
But I mean, the protocol is the protocol, and therefore it's the same. We could add the protocol, right?
Yep.
Or have a plugin for the protocol, an implementation of the protocol, if you will. So that's what I mean by it's the same.
Right, and my only point there was, like, say,
yeah.
less features rather than the behemoth that Akapai has, right? Not following AIPs.
Yeah. The DIDCOM working group was focused on DIDCOM v2 for a very long time, and that was it. And that's at a lower level. And now it's transitioning to, okay, we've got the lower level implemented. We're starting to add protocols on top. Well, that becomes exactly the same as what Aries is, which is all about the protocols on top of the underlying messaging protocol. That's what I mean. Yeah. And I think that transition of the DIDCOM working group from that, what is
to
DIDCOM V2 and getting the spec completed
So
to,
there's a difference there that we need to highlight really carefully. The users group and the working group are two different organizations there.
okay,
One is focused entirely on the spec only and has a future task of exploring taking the spec to the IETF. It depends a little bit on choices made by the trust spanning protocol and whether they don't fulfill the goals of DIDCOM or not. But that's a
yeah,
separate discussion. The
hmm
the users group is what we're talking about, and I
yeah,
would definitely say that the Aries group here is a implementer of DIDCOM. The question
yes,
is whether they're and you've mentioned that they're the same effort and they ought to be combined. One of the things that to consider um, is whether there should only be one, which might be convenient, but certainly feels exclusionary to folks that are not involved in any way with Aries for a variety of interesting reasons, um, that still want to be involved in the implementation of DIDCOM as an effort. And it's a little weird because there's lots of non-technical, very political reasons that there's folks not involved in Aries that are doing this, but it's still a reality that we're faced with.
hmm
And as an example, there's a now diff project that was originally built in the Ethereum world that is an implementer of DIDCOM but has nothing to do with Aries.
and that's Veranima.
That's Veramo, yeah.
Verama or whatever. It's
Veramo.
Veramo. And then and now we have, I listened to the I hadn't had a chance to go to the earlier session that the open agent framework that is in Hyperledger Labs, but very, very similar. I mean, again, um, all of the same words, much as when I first heard the presentation from the Veronimo folks. You know, they're describing the same thing, but have a different implementation and you know, and their own goals in doing it. So I'm not, but it really would be nice to bring all these together.
It would be. And the
Um,
question is do we bring
yeah,
them together in Aries or do we bring them Aries together with them in some other
yeah,
type of thing?
which
And
comes back to all about marketing. That's all about marketing.
Partially, it's not entirely just marketing. From an alignment effort, right? Um, I think there's this perception that Aries is all about the code bases that actually exist, and so other code bases are not welcome. And I don't think that's one we've actively intended to promote, but that's a perception that may exist.
Yeah,
And so part of what we need to do, I think, is figure out alignment. This could actually be here. With how we
yeah.
actually do stuff like this, how we actually align with other implementers of protocols that actually make stuff like this happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that includes OWF and AFJ is the only real code contribution there at the moment. But I anticipate there being more during this year and trying to sort of coordinate around those things. And it may be that we coordinate and we align with these other organizations on different aspects of things, meaning we coordinate DIDCOM protocols in one arena and OpenID related protocols in a different one, right? Or using of sort of sub wallet libraries in separate ones as they may be, which means that instead of having one place historically that we've enjoyed just being here in this group, it's perhaps that we end up spending we change the nature of our work a little bit to align more closely with these other efforts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other thing to mention is that it's been probably over a year We used to spend, historically, this meeting was actually 90 minutes long because we kept going over like routinely. And then we dropped to 60. And one of the things we did when we dropped to 60 is we changed the nature of our project reporting, but we also stopped reporting on related meetings. And it might be due to alignment efforts that we actually rededicate a short portion at the beginning of the meeting to alignment with or to review of the goings on inside of other meetings. And that way we can identify, possible points of alignment or sort of other efforts to collaborate with these other efforts. That's one of the things that we could do, moving forward.
Are you maybe like a community, or is it somebody who would be reporting from those other meetings to this meeting? Like other folks that are attending those other or involved in those other projects and other places, they could come and give like a heads up. I mean, I'm just thinking of Sam, how, Aries is an awesome, one of the reasons why Aries is such a great project is because it is this, we have this meeting that is a central location for everybody from all the different kind of corners and facets of Aries to come together and talk about their different work that's going on, even if it doesn't, completely doesn't necessarily work with one another on a technical level. It's nice to know what everybody's doing. I wonder if kind of the next, I don't know, extension of that is now having people come from other projects and other places and other protocols to, even though they're doing things that may not necessarily work with all facets of Aries, they come and talk about it at this meeting as well, because that's one of the strengths of this community. So maybe there's an effort for interop, effort for alignment, but holding space for others might be a good goal for the upcoming year potentially.
I think that alignment and interop efforts are similar enough that I'm going to put this here in the roadmap. And that's kind of what I'm imagining is sort of at least a reporting on what's happening there, so that we have, ideally brief, but we have folks that were there and can report on the things that relate, and that way we can identify areas of collaboration and then figure out where those can happen, but at least we become aware of them. This is complicated. There are not, and this happened more or less at an organizational level a little while ago, during the emergence of a handful, the prior to the Open Wall Foundation, Trust over IP emerging was kind of the latest time we had these conversations, and about who does actually what. Can we not have 6 places to do things? And for a variety of reasons, we've emerged with a little bit like having 6 places to do things, and I think that that is a reasonable conversation to continue having. There are some divisions that are make some things easier and some not. For example, the Open Wall Foundation has declared emphatically that they will not create specifications, but are only focused on the implementing of things. That doesn't help crossover with Aries as an effort, or Verimo, or the Open Agent Framework that exists independently of Aries. So there are but it does, for example, help a little bit with the fact that, like, Trust over IP, or the DIDCOM users group, or the DIDCOM spec itself, or the other efforts in the diff can actually create specifications. So it's a little bit weird. There's also right now a transition happening with the Decentralized Identity Foundation, with a changed executive director. The new ED is Kim Hamilton Duffy, and she is hitting the ground running pretty fast here now. And so There's in one of her things that's ongoing work that was happening previously, but is working out those alignment and collaboration with these other organizations and how we can make that happen. It's also entirely likely that there will be a change of some kind from an organization perspective during 2024, and so this is not something we get to just fix once and have done. It's going to be a little bit of an ongoing effort as we try to figure out how all the pieces go together and take reasonable efforts to make that happen. So that, I mean, that's also going on. I think that this alignment is going to be something that we need to revisit and kind of watch. The point that I have about this is that if we had a little bit of reporting, a section to report at the beginning of the meeting on other relevant happenings, that we could perhaps stay a little bit more clued in with just what's going on, instead of sort of just only focusing on the stuff we're talking about. Many of us are involved in multiple things, and so when there is something relevant coming across, it would be nice to cover that, just from an awareness perspective. We can't all go to all the meetings, which is part of the challenge there.
But I wonder if there's, an active, not just opening the door, but bringing people in and saying, once a month at this particular meeting, we're going to have the working group chair of OWF come, of blah, 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 see if we can manage to, book time with the leadership or, somebody from those different groups periodically. So we have those check-ins or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, monthly, quarterly, I don't know, whatever. Yeah, whatever makes sense. But I mean, it's one thing to say, our door's open, you can come. And it's another thing to say, like, grabbing people's hands and making them welcoming them into the club.
Well, I was thinking we would just people that were already here that could volunteer information happening in other meetings. But your point is that if we actually be a little bit more sort of official about it, and if there's one of these that occurs somewhere else, we could also go and participate, either also or instead of. We could kind of go and participate and make that happen, and I think that would be really interesting. One of the things that could happen is some org host a quarterly thing where we all sort of talk about what's happened and what's going on. That might be infrequent enough that it's not an incredible burden either to run it or to go participate. But that's also the kind of thing where, like, if there's a 90-minute meeting or a 60-minute meeting that happens once a quarter, then there's going to be a lot of people listening to that recording, right? To just sort of get an update with what's happening across everything. And so I think that is pretty huge from that perspective. And that's a really interesting idea. I don't know that we are the right people to start that, but that it might be something, for example, that I am on the steering committee of the DIF, but that's something that the DIF may be find themselves in a situation to do, to actually organize and coordinate that sort of a thing. And that would be a nice thing to exist, whether we do it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, similar to this list that we're putting together and the talk is going through it. Yeah, if there was some other entity where a similar type of report is given of here's what's coming up this year, here's what happened this quarter or whatever. Yeah, that would be, I think, an incredibly valuable use of time for a lot of people who can't make it. It may be small organizations or teams that don't have somebody peppered around at every single project from here to wherever. And they can be open to, people outside the LF, organizations outside of, the IEEE or, other, I don't know, just other organizations who are doing work in the, identity-ish space would want to come and give a report. I think it'd be pretty cool.
That would be that's a great idea, Helen. I will be sure to attribute the origin of the idea if I share it. Cool. I think this is a really good roadmap. It's not quite as imaginative reachy as maybe I had in my brain, but also it's kind of down to brass tacks, sort things out, be productive, etc., and trying to make those sorts of things happen. This um, this is kind of a doesn't necessarily include any super reachy goals that don't really exist yet that we want to create something new, and that's maybe okay. Is there anything? We only have a few minutes left, but is there anything that just folks like leaning back on a chair and staring at clouds just kind of wished exist within Aries, or just broadly within the whole sort of area of the technical universe that we exist in? Is there something that people just wish existed and maybe impractical, but just wished was a thing?
Hey, Sam, I
Yeah.
think maybe what we should do is we should pose this question and then follow up looking for the responses next week. Give some time for people to think about it.
That's a great idea, particularly because we have 5 minutes left. So let's get a little wild next week. What I'd love to do is do a quick review of what we've actually produced here for folks that were unable to attend the meeting. And then I would really like to have a little bit of more of an imagination session where maybe we cast practicality aside for a minute and reach. And I'm sure that I will have ideas to contribute that won't make sense to actually pursue. But an imagination session I think would be really valuable in how we and maybe spark some ideas on things that we can pursue or efforts that we can be involved in. Warren.
Yeah, thanks. One of my frustrations is that how fragmented things are on mobile, and how difficult it is to have, implementations that can cooperate and handle a wide range of interoperability requirements. So the interoperability is difficult when you consider things like, do I support, not just do I support the same protocol, but do I support the same format? Do I support the same crypto, and versions on all of those things? And there's, given that we're not in control of the mobile platforms themselves, it seems to me there's a need for some specification work for, wallets and cloud agents to cooperate with each other to make sure that the right interactions are getting to the right things that can actually handle them. So we've taken a swag at defining a protocol, but it's rough and incomplete, and I don't know that it covers all the bases, but it's one of those things that makes me fearful for this whole market being able to take off, is that the whole mobile space just seems very fraught.
Yeah. I have zero disagreement there.
Maybe create an open mobile foundation. Couldn't resist. Sorry.
Surely another org will solve all of our problems. Yes. Well, one of the things that we can do is actually highlight issues, even if we don't have the full answer to them, right? And so having stuff like having discussions like that, I think is really valuable.
I think having a definition of what you just said, Warren, of where you think what you think is kind of working, what's not working at all, and what's in between, or what would be nice to have in that definition would be very interested. I'd be interested in your view on that.
Well, I also think that one of the things that we could do is voice our opinions about what we should all be doing as it relates to mobile, including the mobile device manufacturers. In the sense that like we get that like Apple always wants to own absolutely everything, but we can call out what we think should occur in this shift of what's going on. And I think that's valuable. One of the things we have as a community that is not present as strongly elsewhere is this feeling that that credentials are not the only thing that actually matters. And that other types of interactions and changing things and relationships, etc., can improve from these technologies. And that's not as obvious. We preach that a lot, but that's not as obvious into all the way around the sphere as I would hope, at least at this point. And there's a lot of people that are still very unfamiliar with that concept, that there might be something beyond credentials.
So
even if it's something we
I'll
don't
talk to
actually
my boss. I'll talk to my boss and find out if it's okay for me to share that thing that we've been working on. And again, if the answer is yes, like it's not a solution, but it does, I think, do a decent job of articulating the problems and some of the things that we explored to try and, smooth out the edges. But
clearly articulating a problem is very valuable, Warren. If you're able to share that, we'd be grateful.
okay.
Excellent. We're out of time. Thank you, folks, for the conversation today. Next week, we'll plan on giving this an overview and maybe collecting a few ideas, but would love to spend a lot of time reaching for the things that we would love to exist but don't, and with the permission to toss practicality aside a little, to help just uninhibited ideas. And we'll see what we can kind of dream up together as a community, and then that may spark some ideas on things that we can pursue, at least in some small form, towards some of those larger ideas. Thanks, folks. I hope your week is a great one. Happy New Year to everyone, and we will see you around.
Thank you.